Because sales nowadays is nothing to do with coercion or to force somebody into taking something that they don't want. It's a collaborative experience. It's a partnership. And if you look at it that way versus, because those days are gone. People can go on the internet and they do, 85% or 90%, I don't know the exact number, but, they do the research before you talk to them. So really what you're looking for when you're calling someone is how you can collaborate and partner with someone. So when I think of my accountant, I think about peace of mind. I think about, I don't have to worry about this. I can focus on the things that I need to do in my business, because when I was doing it myself, it didn't work so well. And, sometimes that's what you have to do in a business is you have to be able to offload the things or outsource the things that you don't do very well. And bookkeeping, accounting, all of those kind of things, I believe, are one of them. So all of your bookkeepers are bringing huge value to other entrepreneurs.
You're listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Michael Palmer. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper Podcast. I am your host, Michael Palmer, and today's show is going to be a fabulous one. If you've ever had to make a sales call or a cold sales call, or have had an uncomfortable sales conversation in person, today's guest will help you with that. She's a resilience coach, an accomplished speaker, and the author of the book, Becoming a Self-Defined Woman. She works with entrepreneurs, individuals, and corporations such as 3M Canada, Scotia McLeod, and CIBC to do what's needed personally to get where you need to go. Cindy Stradling, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you so much, Michael. I'm super excited to be here.
Yes. And now, Cindy, first off, you have an incredible story of your own personal resilience. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey that has led you to being a resilience coach and really an expert in having sales conversations.
Well, Michael, it started a long time ago. I always joke and say that I'll only admit to 25 years in sales, but I've been doing sales. But actually, I believe people do sales all their life. They just don't realize they're always selling their ideas and things like that. But on a formal basis, I've been in sales for well over 25 years. And 13 years ago, I was actually doing a what I call a cold call clinic. I hesitate to say that now because it scares people. But when I was speaking with the lady who had hired me, she told me that the salespeople were not happy, the people because they'd done a program in the morning, and they weren't happy with what they got delivered to them. And it was a program on communications. And so I went in and I addressed the elephant in the room and said I understood that they had a crappy morning. And I said I was going to proceed, and but if they, after a half hour, I'd check in and see how they were doing. And they were fine. At the end of the day, we went through the whole cold call clinic, and everybody was happy. And when I spoke with the lady at the end, she was walking me back to the reception area. And I knew that I had multiple people that I could have connected her to. And I said to her, what would it be like to have one person that you could be connected, that could connect you to all the trainers and facilitators and coaches that you would need? And in that moment, I decided that I was going to start my own business because I was so well connected. I was doing a lot of this stuff organically anyway. And so I just started. I had my son build my first website. I just started getting out there calling. And I still do cold calls today. I warm them up as much as possible, but I still do them. And like every other entrepreneur, I was up and down, and you had really good days, and then you had other days, and I realized that it was going to take something to keep going. And so after about 3 years of being in business, I was really struggling financially, and I knew that I was at a point where I either had to quit altogether or I would do something that would afford me some income while I was building the business. And so I became a shoe shine girl for a year, and I worked part-time. And what was great about that was I could still run my business from the shoe shine tables, the chairs, sorry. And in fact, the lady who ran the business encouraged that. So cell phone in hand and all my information, and people I would call, and people would call me back, and I would shoe shine. And then on the weekends, I also was a parking lot attendant. And that's what it took. It was like, and I realized that that's the difference between someone who really, really, really wants their business to work or someone who's just in it for thinking it's going to be easy. Because I meet a lot of people who don't really know how much it takes, because it takes you right down to your, I think it takes you right down to your soul. It really comes down to, you got to love what you're doing, because why else would you go through all of that? So that's what I teach people I work with, is because too often people give up too soon. They don't even know how close they are to success, and they give up or they get discouraged or whatever. And my experience is working with entrepreneurs, especially women in sales. There seems to be a lot of negative mindset around that. And we teach them how to be authentic in their sales and how they can move their business forward. I've had people say to me that they've done more in the first 6-8 weeks working with me than they had done in the last year, things like that. So a lot of it is mindset, I should say, and I think you know that from your own experience and our experience of working together. If you can get the mindset right and you put the disciplines and the habits, you can be successful at whatever it is that you want to do.
Absolutely. I just love hearing your story. It just, for me, it's that grittiness of what it takes to get something beautiful and wonderful for yourself in your life. Like it's almost, there's the old saying, the sweet is not as sweet without the bitter. And I think growing a business is similar to that, in that if it just came easy, you wouldn't value it anyways, right? And what I think happens, and I can see in your story, is that along the way you discover wonderful things that you wouldn't have discovered about yourself and about your clients and about your life, really, that you've brought now to your business, which makes it even better.
Yeah, no, and it's true. And people, it's funny because when I talk to people after this length of time, I've got a lot of long-standing customers, and they always said they knew they could depend on me. They trusted me. In fact, a client of mine just emailed me. She's doing a conference and last year she needed 5 speakers. This year she needed 3. And she was speaking to a colleague of mine, and they said, "Why do you use Cindy?" She said, "Because I just trust her. And she just takes whoever I send her because she knows I do my due diligence." And I think that nobody can underestimate the value of being consistent, even with your follow-up. You're always creating your reputation. And I think if I learn nothing else, that even though, I will spend, I don't know, maybe a year and a half trying to connect with someone between LinkedIn or sending information or whatever it is, and it may take 8 or 10 touches, but when we do connect, it's almost like we already know each other. It's crazy. It works. It really, really works. And all those times, and you say you're going to follow up in 3 months, and then you follow up in 3 months, and then you follow up again in 6 months or 4 months, or whatever you say you're going to do, and then you do it, you are building that reputation. And whether you realize it or not, you're actually building rapport and trust, even if you're not having interaction or doing business with companies.
Beautiful. Isn't that the secret really right there? And what you've said is consistent approach to anything you do is train and teach the people that you're someone to be trusted.
Yeah. Because that's who people buy from, is people that they know and trust. And really understanding your value. I know for you with bookkeepers, each one of them, they do certain things that are the same as everybody else, but everybody brings their own unique personality, their own unique way of doing things. And that's what people have to leverage whenever you're in, I won't say commodity, but when you're in a market where there's a lot of competition or a lot of like-minded people. And it doesn't matter who I've worked with, they always can find something that's really unique about who they are, how they work, these little added extra value things that can differentiate them from the guy next door. But the person that's really willing to invest in themselves and actually explore that is fantastic. The sky's the limit, in my opinion. It's because there's nowhere to get. I'm going to be learning till the day I die. I'm going to continue to take courses. I'm going to continue to read. I'm going to continue to grow. And I think any entrepreneur that doesn't do that, I think they really do themselves a disservice.
Agreed. And this listener, our listener right now, is likely somebody who can relate very much with you, Cindy, because they are either thinking about starting their business, they've just started their business, they've gone through struggle. Like we have a listener that's sort of hit every single one of your journeys. And I would almost guarantee that at some point, our listener has had to do something that wasn't necessarily something they wanted to do, but they did it because they knew they needed to in order to keep their dream alive of having a business that works for themselves. Just yesterday, I was reading a post in our group, the Successful Bookkeeper group on Facebook. Wonderful group, wonderful people sharing themselves, sharing what's going on for them. But one lady said, look, I just need to hear some stories of resilience to help me with this tough week that I'm having. And, there was like 50 posts of people telling their story about where they were and what they needed to do. And a lot of it is just keep on going. It's like, look, you're having a bad week, you do what you can, but, take a deep breath and just keep on keeping on. But, for this woman that asked this question, it was, almost soothing of the soul to say, look, you're not alone. There's so many other people out there that are doing it. So I think one of the little things that we'll probably point out here is surround yourself with people that are doing things like you and have been there and are going where you want to go.
100%. And that's the key is mastermind groups. I have accountability partners. I've had coaches. I totally have been so supported around me. And you're one of them, Michael. I mean, we got our coaching together and, what do they say, that the 5 people around you will determine your income, the 5 closest people that you associate with the most, something along those lines. I'm not sure if I'm paraphrasing
you're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. I think it is one of them. It's probably tied back to, that's the generalization. But yeah, if you hang out with people that are hanging out on the couch watching Game of Thrones, well, guess what? You're probably one of those people.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and it's not to say anything negative about that. I mean, people have choices and do what they do. But look, if you want something so bad, like when you told me your story, my father has a similar story with when he was starting his business. Actually, he hadn't actually started his business, but it was in the early 80s. He was laid off work. I mean, there was an incredible recession and the interest rates went through the roof. And
is that what it was, like 18-20%?
Yeah, it went from like a very low number. I don't know what the number was, but maybe 7 or 9% up to like 18%. And he was literally going to lose the house unless he did something. And he's like, he's not going to sit back and just lose the house. He picked apples. He did whatever he could do. He worked everywhere and anytime, like dawn till dusk, doing whatever he had to do to keep the bills paid. And it's like, he was resilient. And then in business, he did whatever he could. Now, why I love working with bookkeepers is one of the reasons I believe he wasn't uber successful in his business is that he didn't have a great bookkeeper. He didn't have somebody looking out for him in terms of to be his consigliere, if you will, to say, look, Dave, you need to do better here with your numbers and manage these things and take care of that. So it wasn't an issue. That was I remember growing up and seeing that. And so it's why I love helping our audience, our community, is because you're helping people like my dad. These are people that will do whatever it takes, that want to win, but but they might be missing something. And Cindy, you're one of those people for me. Your story of going to shine shoes, absolutely love it. Every time I hear it, it makes me want to just, work harder and, find a way to help others, do the things that I do really well and go and do it, right? It's that drive and that grit, if you will. But I don't want to step over too, is that your boss, the woman who owned this small business, I want to honor her because she was a person who's like, look, I know this is just a stepping stone in your pathway to wherever you're going. And she encouraged you to grow your own small business. And that woman, tell me a little bit about her and her philosophy, because I think that is so powerful of a message around small business.
Oh, she's amazing. She has 3 locations. It just happened to her. She was at some conference or something in the States many years ago, and like her, she was a financial advisor, for crying out loud. And she met someone, and they talked about shoe shining or whatever, and it just really appealed to her. But hers is very, very classy. She's at Royal York, at the First Canadian Place and TD Center. And so she has a lot of people. She had another lady who also had a massage business. So it was a part-time thing while she was getting it off the ground. And that's what she loved to do, was to help women. She still does it. She works a lot with actors and actresses because they have, lots of free time and things like that. And she encourages everybody to run their own business, and she's still doing it today. And her name it's Penny Loafers is the name of the business, is Penny Simmons, and she's just been fantastic. We're still friends. We go out a couple times a year. In fact, I wrote a speech on lessons learned from a shoe shine girl. And there's some real lessons to learn. Believe me, when you're sitting at the bottom of a very $3,000 pair of shoes with a guy with, all these fancy suits, Armani's and all this kind of thing, and the last thing in the world I wanted to do was there was a moment, you have those moments, Michael, where, and it was that moment where up until that point, it was sort of going to be fun. It was going to be all these things till the actual day that I first stood there and I had to shine my first pair of shoes. And part of me just wanted to run away. It was like, I don't want to shine anybody's freaking shoes. Excuse my French. And then I thought, okay, Cindy, you've got 2 choices here. You can run away and say you're not going to do this, or you can be the best GD shoe shine girl that you can be. And that's what I decided in that moment. And I shone and I talked. And in fact, a lot of the guys were, big successful businessmen, and they were on my side. They gave me great tips because I told them I was there to support my business. I was not ashamed. I had one lady once, I was doing a talk, and I shared this story, and she said to me, well, do you think you should tell people you were a shoe shine girl? I said, well, it's not like I was a hooker. It was it was a very empowering time for me. And, I think anybody I've ever worked with, that when they get stopped and they get afraid, because there's no growth in your comfort zone, and it's when you go through, and I just had a girl the other day who was resisting, and I just said, you know what, just do it. And then she called me back and she goes, oh my God, that was so easy. So what stopped her was her mind, was all the things that she thought would go wrong, and she didn't. She picked up the call, she made the call, and it was successful. And she was like, so the next time she has those feelings, she's going to remember, oh, I remember. So she's creating that experience for her, which I believe now is the foundation of resilience.
Beautiful. I just love how your story weaves through with your own resilience. Penny, who is a mentor and really, in my mind, a small business hero. She's a person who's making the world a better place through small business. I just absolutely love that. And now here you are. She's coached and mentored you and provided a stepping stone for you. And now you're helping women that are getting started in business and growing their business that, need to get over whatever they need to get over to face their fears and do what they're doing. And you're helping make the world a better place by helping small business. Yeah. So for me, it's just, I love the story. I love hearing it. So let's talk a little bit about that. What are the ingredients to getting over our fears when it comes to conducting a cold, like let's not call it a cold call. Let's call it a sales call, a follow-up call, a sales conversation, whatever we want to call that. But what are the ingredients to overcoming that fear?
Well, I think the most important thing, Michael, and when I work with people, is I have them practice. I think a lot of people just pick up the phone cold. They haven't actually practiced. They haven't set the objective for the call. They don't know what the outcome they want to be. The things I recommend are simple things like wearing a headset, walking around. In fact, I do most of my coaching calls standing. I just find I have a different energy when I do that. But practice. like practice first. I always have people randomly call me, and then I'll give them a bit of a hard time so they can practice how they're going to, continue the conversation, and then call themselves. Get on their cell phone and call from their landline. Listen to what they're saying. Oh, that sounds good. Oh, no, maybe I want to change that. Record your voice, and then I'll listen to it. But I think that's the most important thing, is a lot of people just pick up the phone and the fear takes them over, whereas as soon as they practice, because you and I both know your unconscious mind doesn't know the difference between real or imagined. So if you're imagining you're doing it, if you're practicing that you're doing it, you're actually creating that muscle so that it will be familiar, and after a while it becomes habit. I don't even think about it anymore. But in the beginning, I used to have little sheets where it was like, if they said this, I would say that. If they said this, I would say that. And I had to practice it over and over again so it become automatic. And through time, did I get it right? No, lots of times I screwed up. And I would get off the phone, and then I would think, okay, next time I'm going to do this, or next time I'm going to do that. But it's never about getting it perfect. There's no, in my opinion, there's no one line. It's knowing who you're calling, why you're calling them, and then practice. Spend a few minutes and say, okay, Mrs. John, and just practice before you do it. Take 2 minutes, 3 minutes. And I don't think enough people do that. I think their fear will just take them over and have them not say anything. And so to me, the most important thing is know your objective of why you're calling. Always ask permission. Always, always, always ask permission to continue. And even in a sales call, people will give me kickback and they'll say, no, if you ask, they're going to say no. And I said, that's not true. A lot of the times. In fact, I read a book and it actually works. And this is a great tip for anybody. At first, I was so counterintuitive, I resisted it, but I've been doing it. So normally what we say is this a good time to call? And people will say no. But it honestly, in this book, it's called Question-Based Selling. As I said, I'm always reading. And it was something my sister read, and it was counterintuitive to say, is this a bad time for me to call? Is this a bad time for you? In all of our training, that would be, no, don't say that. I have to tell you, since I started using that, not one person has said no. Every person has said, you can almost hear their brain go, oh, no, it's okay, because what they call it emotional rescue. I've started using it, and it's amazing. It's totally amazing. Not one person has said no. Whereas when I said, did I catch it at a good time, they're all saying no. Because it's never a good time.
It's never a good time. That's actually something I picked up from a book called Predictable Revenue. Forget the fellow's name, but he was the fellow that helped grow Salesforce.com from a little tiny basement apartment to a $1 billion company in 10 years. And that was one of the key moves was that specific question when opening a call is this a bad time? And in the book, he talks about, if you say, is this a good time? There is never a good time. And I think it's such a pleasant thing it's like, you know what? I think it has a lot of caring in it. Is like, is this a bad time? Like, because you're giving them permission to say no. You're actually inviting them to say no. Whereas the other was the expectation is that people on a positive spin, and I even use it in my follow-up email. So someone I might have connected with on LinkedIn a couple of months ago, I'll send them a note and say, is this a bad time? No, I'll say, setting up a time to call. If this is a bad time, let me know. I can't even tell you the number of people that would never email me back or haven't emailed me back in over a year, email me back and they go, I'm traveling this week, but how about mid-May? Yeah, I honestly, this has become, I even say it with my friends. Am I catching you at a bad time? Yeah. Because that's how I say it. Am I catching it at a bad time? I mean, it is. It's automatic. Yeah. It's now automatic. And I just love the question because they're like, no, this is good time. Or if it isn't, they're like, you know what? I'm going into a meeting. It's like, cool, call me back. Yeah. And so thanks for bringing that up and giving that beautiful gift to our listener. I think add this, please, everyone, add this to your daily routine, your calling, use it. It will only provide a more fluid and fabulous experience throughout your day and make you a lot more money, I think, is probably the key. So that's fantastic, Cindy. We kind of got a little off on a side there. I was like, I'm enjoying this conversation so much. So getting back to overcoming the fears, you mentioned something around in the early on is this whole desire, right? You really wanted to be successful in your business and you did whatever you had. How do you alter the context for people around even just taking the action of making the call?
Just to do it. People will say to me when we're coaching, they'll say, I don't know how to do it. I said, well, the only way to do it is to do it, because it's the only way you've learned anything. And then it goes back to your value, I think, Michael, because if people get their value, and don't take this as a conceited thing, but I have an attitude, it's their lucky day that I'm calling them, because I know that what I do for them can save them so much time, and time is money. And time is also stress and all those things. So I think the biggest thing is to have a plan. First of all, start small. Say, okay, today I'm going to make 2 calls or take 1 call. And just do 1, and then evaluate it. But you have to practice. You have to understand your value. So, when most people go through their whole process of setting up their business, they do their unique selling proposition, they do all those kind of things. Keeping that top of mind. Because a lot of people, when they're inexperienced, think they're bothering people. And if they come from a place of, I'm bothering them, then that's what they're going to be doing. Whereas if they really get their value, I had a lady once say to me at a talk, she put her hand up, and I was talking about call every 3 weeks and blah, blah, blah. And she said, aren't you bothering people when you're calling them that often? I said, well, if you think you're bothering them, then you are. You shouldn't be calling. You should know what value you bring. Get really clear on what the deliverable, what the outcomes. That's what people are buying. They're not buying a widget or a program or whatever. They're buying outcomes.
Yeah, no. For our listener, nobody wants to buy bookkeeping. In fact, they'd love to just imagine that it's not even a thing. It's not there. Yeah. It's like the tax department doesn't exist, right? So it is a shift, because our listener is a technician. It's what they do. They're passionate about it. They love it. They spend their whole life working on it and thinking about it. And what they do is so important to them. You listener right now, bookkeeping is so important to you, but it is not the case for your customer, your client, your ideal customer, the business owner. It's not. For them, it's what they do that's so important. Right. So what you do for them is this value that Cindy, I think you're talking about, is be really clear on how awesome you are and how you're going to make their life so much better. And that if just like me, every day I'm thinking how I make the lives of bookkeepers so much better. It's what I get out of every morning. I wake up and I step into that, and that leads to me doing what I need to do. And I love it. I love it. So making a call, calling a bookkeeper, it's like I'm calling to make their lives better. Who wouldn't want to have a call like that?
Absolutely. And I think that's the key. And then not to, and examine your beliefs around. Whenever I do a program, we always examine the beliefs around sales and salespeople. And a lot of it is a lot of negative stuff from the past. Because sales nowadays is nothing to do with coercion or to force somebody into taking something that they don't want. It's a collaborative experience. It's a partnership. And if you look at it that way versus, because those days are gone. People can go on the internet and they do, 85% or 90%, I don't know the exact number, but, they do the research before you talk to them. So really what you're looking for when you're calling someone is how you can collaborate and partner with someone. So I think when I think of my accountant, I think about peace of mind. I think about, I don't have to worry about this. I can focus on the things that I need to do in my business, because when I was doing it myself, it didn't work so well. And, sometimes that's what you have to do in a business, is you have to be able to offload the things or outsource the things that you don't do very well. And bookkeeping, accounting, all of those kind of things, I believe, are one of them. So all of your bookkeepers are bringing huge value to other entrepreneurs.
So true. So true. Now, you help people get through this and do these sorts of things, what, if someone wanted to learn more about what you've been speaking about, Cindy, and more about yourself, what would be the best way? What's the first step to somebody waking up in a day and going, I can't wait to make calls and call and help all these business owners out there? What, if they're not there right now, what's the first step to helping them get there?
Well, first identify who your best customers are. Like who's what we call your ideal customers. Where would you be most likely to find them? LinkedIn and social media now, I'm a firm believer in LinkedIn. Once you can start to identify what size of company, I'm sure they have them all over North America, the best companies to work for, small, medium-sized companies. Like there's all kinds of lists and different places that you could go. And you just need to start out with a few. I think that's what the big thing is a lot of people, they think they got to do hundreds or thousands in CRMs and all that. You don't have to do that in the beginning. I think baby steps, and you grow that muscle and you get more confidence. And another one is look at your existing clients. Who do you know? Who are you working with now? Are they able to give you a referral? A lot of people are a little hesitant to give referrals or even ask for referrals. I think it's a natural form of getting new business. Is there anybody else that might be of interest, that might be interested in, or that I should talk to? Or would you could even, leave information with your customers. But I think the most important thing is to have a plan. So if you're going to say, okay, I'm going to call 5 people a day to start with, have your list. So 1 week, spend the time, make your list. These are the companies that I'm going to call. This is the position I normally call into. And start to do your research. Reach out to them on LinkedIn. Start following them, liking their articles, things like that. Just simple things, but start small. Because if you get too big, then you're going to get overwhelmed. So I think baby steps in the beginning, and you don't, believe it or not, once you start, you're going to be going, all of a sudden you'll pick up momentum. You'll realize that, wow, people really need my services. People really want my services. It's crazy. And maybe they don't want them today. I have a saying that no only means no today, right? And timing is everything. So again, if you talk to somebody and they say, no, they're happy with who they're working with, that's great. That means that is a potential client. Then you find out a good time to follow up, or you just create your own time to follow up. Could be a year from now. Then you check back in with them. I can't even tell the number of customers I've gotten because I talked to them at one point and they were happy, but I followed up 6-8 months later and they weren't. So the timing was really good. So the most important thing is to set up a system. Have a system where you're constantly going to be adding new people in. Every week you got to add in more. Keep your funnel full. Because what will happen is you'll get a few new customers, you'll get busy, and then you'll be focusing on your customers. And then when they're running status quo and everything's running smooth, you got to start from scratch again. So that's what really stops people, is that they give a lot of momentum, they start creating some, they get new business, then all of a sudden the business becomes smoother, or they got everybody on their own system or whatever, and then they've got capacity, they still have capacity, or you have a few people leave or whatever, and then they got to start all over again. But if you're consistently adding new people, whether it's 2, 3, 5, 10, whatever it is for your business, every week to the funnel, then the likelihood of you having to start from sort of ground zero again is nil. Does that answer your question?
It does. And, there's something that I think the mindset right now of many of our listeners will be, many of them have already too many customers, right? Okay. And so the objection will be, I've got too many customers right now. So if I start calling people, then, I'm going to be overwhelmed. And I always like to bring up that when you have demand for your product, the higher the demand, and if the supply remains the same, if you just want to always remain a solo bookkeeper and not have staff, obviously if you want to scale your business and have staff, well, then demand means we can add supply, and with that, the business will grow, more revenue, more profit, all that good stuff. But if you want to keep just for yourself, demand increases, supply stays the same, there is upward price pressure. So you can charge more for what you do, the value you deliver. You can charge more for the value you deliver. As well, you get to choose or be more choosy with who you work with. And so
100%.
don't think about it as being a bad thing when new people are coming in. It's like, hey, you know what? I kind of like you better than the one I've got over here. It's like, yeah, if you're working with people that are not making you happy, not delivering into what you're doing, or not part of your program, then this is the way to almost surefirely ensure that your business is growing, but growing with great customers that value you, that do what you tell them to do. And so systems, I truly believe, and I'm sure the listeners going, yeah, Michael, I know, system-driven business. That's the way, whether you want to be a big business or just remain a solo practitioner, systems-driven is the Shangri-La. It's what will get you to where you have a business that's both profitable, fun, and enables you to do the things that you love in your life. So totally love that you brought that up, Cindy, and provided a pathway to actually creating and making it happen. Don't do this one-off. Make this a part of your daily, ongoing way. Maybe it's one call a day.
Yep.
You know, if that's one call a day, I would believe, Cindy, I think there's many listeners right now that aren't making any calls. So one call a day is like, that's 5 calls a week. Is that 20 a month that would now happen? I mean, this is incredible growth just from one call a day.
Yep. And that's what I said. And everybody can do one call a day.
You bet. You bet. Cindy, this has been so great. And I know you have limited time because you're busy helping the people that you help. And I want to thank you so much for your generosity and giving your time for our listener today. You know, where can people find out more about you? And if so, maybe even work with you. What's the best way for them to do that?
They can just visit my website. It's probably the best way. It's cindystradling.com. It's super simple. It's got all my contact information there. It talks about my programs, my coaching, everything.
Beautiful. Well, listen, we will put the link in. And again, thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, my pleasure. And thank you for having me, Michael.
It's been all my pleasure.
Thanks.
That wraps another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper Podcast, and what a fantastic episode it was. To learn more about today's guest and to get access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Until next time, goodbye.
You've been listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with Michael Palmer. For more information and to download the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening.